first time I went to India was exactly 20 years ago, 1996, and that's the beginning of using handmade textiles. And I think that's when I realized amount of time and effort to make handmade textiles. I just couldn't see the scraps being thrown out. So that's when we started to save. I was invited by National Institute of Design. It's a school, design school in India, and they were soliciting designers and artists to come to go to Kutch and work with artisans in earthquake-affected area. And I was with, in Ahmedabad at that time, and I went to a little sari fair, where in India every so often, all different sari makers from different part of India will come together and have a fair. And they thought that it would be a really good opportunity for me to see traditional sari cloth. And I went and I saw West Bengal booth. And what I noticed first was the really interesting way that they use the colors and the way they juxtapose the colors. And it was very different field of colors than I was used to. So I was very much attracted by the group of colors. The Jamdani fabric is woven in West Bengal, and generally they're farmers, and they do it on like a pit loom. And it's a traditional sari cloth, and it's a very particular skill that you need to have to make it, because all the design is done sort of like an embroidery on the loom, and that technique is very tedious, and they like to be pretty like a freehand. So once they get the design kind of understand in their mind, they don't like to have references. And I love the idea of the makers having certain amount of creative power. And that's another reason I was very interested in Jamdani, because it's the maker who has to put a lot of creative input into it as much as a designer. So that's another reason I'm so interested in Jamdani. And because of that reason, each sari or each length of fabric that we make, which is 11 meters long, tend to be unique in color, tend to be unique in design. And that was my initial interest in saving the scraps. We would send the fabric that made sari cloth, sari and the textiles to Los Angeles, and we would cut it, and I would save it in the cutting room, our scraps. But we are also producing some in India, so I brought all the scrap fabrics to India that we cut in LA, and we put it all together, and I just made a big pile. And they were kind of dumbfounded, because they weren't sure whether this is something that they should be doing, because in India, following the caste system, that it's the lowest class are the ones who go through trash, and that's what they kind of thought of as what I was about to have them do. And I definitely, having worked in different countries, and I definitely see different principles they follow and different traditions they have. And so I jumped into it and I started sorting it, and which made it so much easier. We made very first sample, which is quite close to this piece. This is recycled, but something like that. And they really liked it. They loved making it, and they thought it was very beautiful. So then we built a system to make textiles, and we made a 4-meter length. The base of the panels were sewn together of the larger end pieces, and that created the base. And on top, we would just lay out the color groups. And the color groups, I separated them initially first. And then we put these smaller pieces, and using little scissors, and we would hand rip the textiles. And then we laid it out, and then we basted it first, and then they would just draw with pencil. And again, the layer of work that I'm interested in keeping is the memory of every gesture that we make. So I tell them, don't worry about pencil marking, keep the pencil mark, because that is your intention of cutting mark. And all these are very new to the artisans, and I find it, those thoughts and the way they are able to make their work, their pencil mark even has a value, I think gives them a lot of sort of self-confidence for them to be able to make decisions on their own. I love working with my hands, and that gives me the most pleasure, and I love working with people. And the part of it I really enjoy the most is communication without words. That you could communicate just with hands and pictures and diagrams. And I think that gives a lot of room for both to be creative, because we are not making things so clear. And especially working with artisans, like in India, their worth isn't as valued as it is here. So the whole idea of just being with them and sitting with them and communicating, and that you are learning their tricks and trade, is really have been the best part of my design and creative experience.